another sewing tutorial. My name is Ann-Sophie and I'm the person behind Sewing with Solana, and today's sewing tutorial is going to be a beginner-friendly sewing tutorial, and we're going to make the Willow top. It is a super easy top to make, and I think the tutorial will also be super easy to follow, but at the same time you're going to have a piece of clothing that is going to look super nice and you'll actually wear it. So I think there's so many sewing projects out there for beginners that are so boring and a bit lame, but I want to be able to teach you how to sew, and at the same time you'll have pieces of clothing that you will actually wear. And I used to I love the Willow top. To me it looks like a bit like a business in the front and party in the back. To me it's like a super nice piece of clothing to wear in the evening if you go out for dinner and then you end up going out. And you can also wear it super nicely with like a cardigan or a blazer over it. And I'm going to be making mine with a blend of linen and viscose. I always used to make it just with 100% viscose because we want to have a fabric that's super flowy and lightweight, but I just went to the fabric store and they didn't have any nice colors, so I got this fabric instead. And it's still 80% viscose, so it's still super thin and flowy, which is perfect. And even though my fabric is white, we are going to be using 2 layers of fabric, so it's not going to be see-through. And you can find the sewing pattern I'm going to link it in the description, and then you can download it, print it out, and now I'm going to show you how we glue the sewing pattern together. And then we need to cut it out in our size, and then we cut out the fabric, and then we can start sewing. So let's go. One more thing for the sewing pattern: when you print it out, you really have to make sure that you set the scale of the printer to a 100% scale. Because otherwise the whole sewing pattern is not going to work. And on the first page, if you want to, you can first print out just the first page, and then you find 2 boxes here that you need to measure first. One of the boxes needs to measure 5 centimeters and then 5 centimeters again, and the other box is 2 inches and 2 inches. And if those measurements are correct, then you can go ahead and print all the rest of the pages. But if they're not correct, then maybe you have to change something on the settings of your computer or of your printer. But yeah, once you have printed them out and everything is looking good, it's time to arrange the pattern. And with the sewing pattern here, you don't need to cut off any edges. You can go ahead and lay them in the right spot, and then we can glue them together. And I'm going to show you how to put them together. So on each piece of paper you can see a letter and a number, and we start with A, and then it goes down like A1, A2 and A3, and then B1, B2, B3, C1, C2, C3, D1, D2 and D3. And let's say we start with the first one, A1, and then we take the second one, and as you can see here, here's a dotted line, and you need to put the new paper right where the line is, and then also those lines here on the side need to line up. And then you do the same with A3. You put it right where the dotted line is, and then this dotted line here is lining up again, and then we come up here to B1 and we put it on top of A1, and you put it right where the dotted line on this side is, and then we just keep going. And I would recommend always just putting everything down here roughly, and then you go one page by page, and I take some see-through tape and just glue all the pages together. And the next step now is to take your measurements of your bust and of your waist, and then you go to the size chart to find your right size. And to take your measurement, you take the measuring tape and you wrap it around the widest part of your bust. And you still need to be able to move it around just a bit, so don't make it too tight but also not too loose. So for me that's 88 centimeters today, and my waist is 70 centimeters today. And yeah, then you go to your size chart, and then there's a size key on top of the pattern, and each pattern, each size, has different dotted lines. I printed mine out in black and white now, but you can also print it out in color, and then all sizes will also have a different color. But I'm a size small, so I'm just going to cut out the sewing pattern and I'm going to follow my size here, the size small. So once you've finished cutting out everything, you should have the front of the willow top, which needs to be cut out 2 times. And then you also should have the strap, which needs to be cut out 2 times on fold. Now it's time to cut out our fabric, and the first thing we're going to do, we take our fabric and we're going to fold it in half. And the first thing we do now, we take this pattern piece, which is going to be the long strap, and the reason why we have folded the fabric in half is because here on one end on the pattern it says fold, and that means that the fabric needs to be folded here. So I'm laying it on my fabric, and now you have 2 options. Either you can take some pins and just pin your paper pattern onto the fabric, or if you want to, you can also use some chalk and just trace the pattern piece onto your fabric and then cut it out. And because we need to cut it out twice, I'm just going to do the same again, lay it on the fabric again, pin it on it, and then cut it out. So here we have one super long strap, and then here we have the other one, and we're just going to put it to the side. And now it's time to cut out the main piece of the pattern. And because we need to cut it out twice, I'm going to leave the fabric folded in half here. And I'm going to take my pattern, lay it on here, make sure the fabric is nice and straight, and then we're going to pin it onto the fabric again and then cut it out. So now that it's time to start sewing, we're going to start with our straps. I'm just going to take one of them, and what we're going to do now is we're going to take it, fold it in half, and then we're going to sew with a 1 centimeter seam allowance away from the folded edge. So here on this side the fabric is folded, and now I'm going to do 1 centimeter away from this fold, a stitch from all the way from the top till the very end. If you want to, you can pin this together. Which maybe if you're new to sewing and this is your first project, you can do that. You can just go ahead and put pins all along here. But if you're already a bit more advanced, you don't have to do that. So here's what I mean. You can just fold it in half and then just stick some pins in here all the way to the end. Or if you want to, you can just skip that part and go straight ahead to sewing it. I'm just going to stick a few pins in here so you know what I mean, and then I'm going to stop. I'm just going to put this one in here, and now I'm going to stop, and now we go over to our sewing machine and start sewing. Machine is set to a straight stitch, and then my stitch length is at 2.5, and my width is set to 0, my needle is in the middle, and I have to set my tension to a 5. But yeah, tension is different for every sewing machine, and every time when I work with a different material, I have to change my tension. So I'm going to take my fabric now and place it under my foot, and I just want to show you on my sewing machine there's a few different lines marked, and because I want to sew with a 1 centimeter seam allowance, I'm going to put the foot down, and then I'm just going to glide my fabric along the 1 centimeter line here. So this is what it looks like now, and what we have to do next is we take our scissors and we need to cut the excess fabric off. So I'm gonna cut quite close to my seam here, and make sure that you cut where the fabric is open here, not where it's folded. And yeah, we're gonna cut quite close to the seam, but just really make sure that you're not too close because you don't want the stitching to come undone again. But because the next step what we're gonna do is we're gonna flip this inside out. And right now there would be a bit too much fabric here, so we're just going to trim it down so it's easier to turn it around. And now to flip this inside out, I'm gonna take a loop turner, but if you want to, you can also take a safety pin and just pin it here at the beginning. Pin it through here, and then you can push the needle all the way till the very end, but this is a bit more time consuming, so I'm always using my loop turner. And if you love sewing, I would recommend you to get one just because it saves a lot of time. And I'm gonna start at one end, put it in here, and then I'm just gonna push it till it comes out again. And now, as you can see, here's this little thingy, and we need to push this through the fabric, and then we close it. And now we start pulling the fabric over it and gently pull the fabric all the way till the end. And now when it comes out at the other end, I can take the loop turner off, hold on to it and turn it all inside out. And this is what it looks like now, and now we have to do the exact same thing to the other strap. Now we should have two straps, and we're just going to put them to the side now. And now it's time to move on to the actual top. So we're going to lay the two pieces of the top in front of us, and as you can see, I laid them on top of each other, so we have two layers. And what we're going to do now, we're going to pin it together. Here, this is the end of the top. We don't need to put any pins in here because we're not going to sew here, we're going to leave this open. But we're going to start sewing here, and we're going to sew all the way around, keep going until the end here. So we're going to sew everything together except the bottom of the top. And now we're going to start sewing. We're going to start on this one side, and we're going to sew with 1 centimeter seam allowance all the way until we come over here. And now that we're close to the corner, I'm just going to make sure that my needle is down. Then I'm lifting the foot and I'm just turning the fabric over. And put the foot down again and continue sewing. And at this corner we're doing the same. I'm making sure the needle is down, then I lift the foot up and we can continue sewing. Once we're done sewing this, we're gonna come to the top of our top and we're gonna cut off the corners here, because when we flip this inside out, we really want the corners to look nice, and it's gonna look nicer when there's less fabric built up in the corner. So I'm just gonna cut it off here. Just make sure you don't cut any of the stitches off. And we're gonna do the same on this side. So this is what it looks like. Here's the one corner and here is the other corner. So now that we have sewn this together, we're gonna go over to our iron because we're gonna flip it inside out. So the good side where there's no stitches is facing us, and we're just gonna iron it and press all the seams flat just so it looks nicer. And when you iron and before you iron, just make sure that the corners where we have just cut off the little part is outside. And if you want to, you can take like a object that's like a not really sharp. For example, I'm taking my needle here that's super what's the opposite of not sharp? I don't know, it's not very sharp. So you just want to take something, and just so we're pushing the corners out, and we're doing the same on this side. Like if you want to, you could take a pen, for example, so just so they look nice. And yeah, now we're gonna iron it. So this is what it looks like now. I would recommend you to go over to your iron now and just press this flat, because we're gonna sew it soon, and I just feel like it looks a bit nicer when you first iron it. And after we've ironed it, we're gonna sew with a 1 centimeter seam allowance away from the folded edge here. And also one tip when you're ironing this now, my needles, like the heads here, are made out of glass. If yours are made out of plastic, make sure that your iron is not touching the plastic part here. Now I'm taking my fabric again and putting it under the foot of the sewing machine, and on my side here I also have some lines here, and now because I want to sew with a 1 centimeter seam allowance away from the folded edge here, I'm going to glide it along the 1 centimeter line on this side. And remember to front and back stitch always. So what we're doing now, this is what it looks like now, and now we're going to start sewing here, and we're going to sew quite close to the edge. Just make sure that you don't go over the edge, but yeah, just start here, close to the edge, until the end here. So now we have to lay the top in front of us again and make sure that what's facing us is where we only see one line of stitching, and here where you can see 2 lines of stitching needs to be facing the table. And what we're doing now is we're folding this 15 centimeters up, and we measure it, we stick some needles in it again, and then we're just going to do basically the same that we did up here. And we're going to iron it, then we're going to go ahead and sew it with 1 centimeter seam allowance. But here, the little flap that was here, we folded it up and sewed it onto the fabric. But here we're going to fold it down, but I'm going to show you. But the first thing we're doing now is we're going to measure this 15 centimeters all the way. Okay, I just realized that my camera was not filming, which is a bit annoying, but I'll just show you what I was just sewing. So I was sewing along here until the end here, again with 1 centimeter seam allowance. So I was just doing what we did earlier to the upper part of the top, just that I did it to the lower part of the top now. So now it looks like this, and we're just gonna open this all up again, and this time we're ironing this thing down. So it's looking like this after. Now it's looking like this, and we're gonna sew again along here. We're gonna start here until the other side, and we're gonna sew quite close to the edge again. right now I have ironed this down just so it looks a bit more nice, and I have also ironed my long straps. And what we are doing now is we're gonna take the loop turner, or if you don't have one you can just take a safety pin again, and I'm gonna pull my loop turner through the first hole until it comes out on the other side again. And now I'm taking one of the straps and hook it onto the hook here, and then I'm gonna close this thing again and pull it through here. And we're doing the same to the other loop that we have sewn. So this is what it looks like now, and what you want to do to be able to wear it, you have to pull this all together so it's all scrunched together. And you do the same to the bottom. So this is it for today's tutorial. We're done with the Willow top. I really hope you were able to follow along and you were able to do all the steps that I was doing. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments and I will answer them. And I'm also super happy with this fabric. As I said earlier, I think that I've only ever used viscose, like 100% viscose to make this top, but today it's like 80% viscose and 20% linen. And I think it looks so nice, and the fabric also falls super nice, which is very important for this design, that the fabric is like super drapey. I'm gonna film a video either later today or tomorrow of me wearing it, but you'll just see it in a few seconds. Yeah, I'm really excited to wear this, and I love that I made it in white. Before, for my brand, I made it in black, which is so nice for going out, and I made it in a cream white. But yeah, I really like how this fabric looks like. It really has a linen look, which is super nice for summer. And yeah, thank you for watching this video, thank you for following along, and leave me a comment if there's anything that was unclear, and I hope to see you at one of my next tutorials.